Hi, this is Andy Cullen and Chris Pomeroy of Growing Up Aspen, and we started to interview a bunch of our friends and found out that we had a bunch of schoolmates that ended up in the entertainment world. So we have to start a new chat podcast called Movie Chat. And today we are here with Fenell Doremus, who got her start into the documentary world with films like Hoop Dreams. So here we are with Fenell Doremus.
So
What
tell us
got
a
you?
bit about your film work.
Yeah, I was going to say, like, what got you into the documentary? How did you get into that field of documentary?
A little bit by luck and happenstance, I guess. I in a very roundabout way wound up going to the University of Wisconsin to college. Um, I had started out going to art school in London and then decided I didn't want to be in art school, transferred back, lived in California for a little bit, and then wound up really just like my brother said it was a cool campus, so I applied. And Rachel McCarthy was
Right.
going. I also applied to the University of Washington in Seattle, and I visited, didn't know anybody, went to University of Wisconsin, went to a party with Rachel, and then was, oh, this seems like a fun school. So, and then I just was taking a bunch of classes, and by my junior year, my advisor was like, "Well, you're 3 credits away from being a sociology major." I was like, do they have film classes here? Like, I don't need another art class, but I wouldn't mind taking a film class. And they had a film studies class or a film appreciation or something, which I took, but they didn't actually have any production classes. But so I was starting to get this like little inkling, but I graduated with a sociology degree. In my final year, I had this great professor, and we watched a lot of documentaries. And one of them was Eyes on the Prize, which I don't know if you guys have seen that. It's a civil rights
Yeah, yeah.
series WGBH did. Really, really powerful. And I was like, oh, so these don't have to be like boring educational nature films. Like documentaries can actually be about people and really um, interesting. And so, at that age, we're all just like, well, yeah. So I moved. I was thinking I'd move to San Francisco, and my roommate in college at the time was like, "Why don't you just move to Chicago?" And I was like, "Okay, but I can't sign a lease because I'm not staying." So I came, and we were all just getting jobs, and I had a waitressing job and some other random job, and I was like, I'm going to look at who's doing film, and I went into the yellow pages.
Yeah, back in the
I
day.
looked up Kartemquin Films. And they were like, yeah, come and be interviewed for an internship. And so I went there and I interviewed for an internship. And it was like this, do you know it at all? You wouldn't if you
What?
What's the name of it again?
it's called Kartemquin Films. It's 3 names that are put together.
Kartem-
And it's still going, and it's at this point 60 years old and kind of considered one of the more renowned documentary film
Oh, cool.
organizations.
So it's specific for documentary.
Uh-huh.
Oh, that's
But at
cool.
that time, they'd made like some interesting union films. I mean, they'd
Dream.
made some really great films and a film about an artist, but they had they had been a collective for a long time, but at that point they were just 2 founding members who were leading it, and they'd taken on these young guys who wanted to make a basketball film or short. And then it evolved into this like epic longitudinal story about these 2 basketball players, and that was Hoop Dreams.
Yes.
They were editing it as I came on as an intern, and before I knew it, I was like an assistant editor replacing footage. Anyway, it hooked me. It really was like, I say it was like my
So Hoop
curse.
Dreams is where you got your start. That's kind of cool.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's really cool.
And I don't know if I would have stuck with documentary had it not been for that film, because I mean, first of all, I watched the ride. I wasn't there from the beginning, but I saw like, these guys were just like, well, let's get it in some festivals. And then like, whoa, they couldn't raise money. And then the MacArthur Foundation came in with a big grant, and they couldn't get it. They couldn't get our local PBS station to be a sponsor. So they had like the Minnesota Public Television station be their sponsoring station. And then they were like, wow, we got into Sundance. That's supposed to be a pretty good festival. And then it just like exploded from there. And so, but it wasn't, you know, for me, it wasn't so much even that. That wasn't, you know, success was not what did it for me. It was really just like the craft of making that film and all of it. So that hooked me, and I ended up getting hired on at the company to be sort of like an in-house producer. And then just learned everything on the job. I was
it's a practical education in a way, you know. In other words, in school they teach you so much stuff, and then it's nice to know, but you only use this, and then there's also this other stuff that happens in the real world because it's constantly evolving and changing. And so I feel like real world, because that's how I got into it too, is I just dived into the real world and just learned as I went, and it was cool because you have a lot of the people on this project are your mentors in a way.
Totally. I mean, and I think the documentary film industry in particular is very, you know, it's very like a give back kind of a field and industry. People are very generous with their time and knowledge. And by the way, I'm now teaching very part-time at a film school in Chicago. And in my head, I've been sort of like, wow, like this is a trade school. And you should only ever have teachers who are still making.
Right.
Because like those folks who got their grad degrees and went right into teaching, like what are they teaching? I mean, you know, they don't know what it's like to be in the field. They're teaching theory, which doesn't.
Right. And that's what, you know, it's funny because PNCA out here, which is Tom Alpern went out here. The reason I'm out here is because Tom Alpern was like, you gotta go out here, you know. And, but the PNCA has a rule where the teachers actually have to have shows. They actually have to do stuff.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I guess it's like, you know, professors who have to be publishing or doing research. Yeah. But I know in the art school world, which I think sometimes film falls into, it does tend to be a little bit more like, let's talk about these different movements. And, you know, it's good. It's great. Nice background. But like, you know, it doesn't help people. With me, they're just like, well, and then what did you do? Because I tell them these like real world stories of
I went to art school too, and I think like you, I was like a double major of art and philosophy, which was think deep thoughts about being unemployed most of your life. So but yeah, I mean, that was the same thing. They were like, here's how you draw, here's how you do this, well, how do I get a job? What do I do after that? Well, I mean, we taught you how to frame your work, and well, that's not.
What art school did you go to?
It's Colorado State University.
Oh, okay. Yeah, my brother went there for a little bit too.
Really?
Hi, this is Growing Up Aspen. Glad you enjoyed that last little blast, and I hope you stick around for a few more. We want to, the authors of Growing Up Aspen, Adventures of the Unsupervised would like to thank you and ask you to, if you're interested, you can check out our book at twistandturnpress.com, or any local bookstore can order our book. So we will talk to you soon and hear more from some of our friends. Thanks.